You ever get that feeling that you're totally in the driver's seat of your own life? You know that every single decision, big or small, comes from you and your own free will? Well, what if I told you that feeling, that sense of control, might just be the most convincing trick your brain has ever pulled? Let's peel back that curtain. I mean, just think about it for a second. This simple act of clicking on this, it felt like a choice, didn't it? You saw it, you were curious, you acted. Simple. But was that decision really yours? Or was it just the last little domino to fall in a long, long chain of events that started way before you even thought about watching this? Yeah, that's a pretty jarring statement, right? It's the core idea of something called determinism, and it's meant to shake things up. It basically flips our whole understanding of ourselves on its head. The idea is that every single thing we do, from what you had for breakfast this morning to who you end up falling in love with, was already kind of baked into the fabric of the universe long before you were even here. So, is it really just an illusion of choice? Let's look at the philosophical case for determinism. And believe me, this isn't some newfangled idea. No, philosophers have been wrestling with this for centuries, trying to figure out if we're writing our own stories or if we're just actors reading from a script we never even get to see. Okay, so what exactly is determinism? Well, to put it simply, it's the idea that the whole universe is like a giant cosmic set of dominoes. One event causes the next, which causes the next, and a perfectly predictable chain of cause and effect. And get this, that chain includes the incredibly complex storm of chemical reactions happening inside your brain, the very storm that you experience as a thought or a decision. So, how does this unseen chain of choice actually work? Well, it starts with stuff you had zero control over, right? Your genes, the environment you grew up in. That stuff shapes all your past experiences. And those experiences literally wire your brain and tweak your brain chemistry. So, by the time you're faced with what feels like a choice, the path leading to your quote unquote decision has pretty much already been laid out. All right, so the brain decides first. Let's dig into the scientific evidence against free will. You know, for a really long time, this was all just a philosophical debate, a thought experiment. But now we can move from the armchair into the lab. Because in the last few decades, neuroscientists have found some really startling evidence that suggests our brains are the puppet masters, pulling the strings long before we are even aware the show has started. And this is the real bombshell. Neuroscientists have found that our brains show activity that predicts a decision before we're consciously aware of making it. I mean, think about that. Using brain scans, scientists can literally see the prep work for an action, something as simple as lifting a finger, building up in your brain before you have that feeling of, okay, I'm going to lift my finger now. It's like your brain has already voted and counted the ballots while the conscious you is still walking to the voting booth. When you look at the actual timeline of a decision, it's just wild. Check this out. At around half a second before you have that conscious, I'll do it moment, your brain is already starting to prepare the action. And then at about 200 milliseconds before you know what you're going to do, a researcher just looking at your brain scan can actually predict your choice. Only then, at time zero, do you consciously feel like you've made the decision. It's mind-boggling. So that leads to a huge, kind of uncomfortable question, doesn't it? If your brain decides before you do, who is actually in charge? If the conscious you know, the part that feels like the CEO, the one calling the shots, is actually the last to get the memo, is it really in charge at all? Or is it more like a press secretary, just stepping up to a podium to announce a decision that was already made behind closed doors? Okay, so if nothing is a choice, what are the moral and existential consequences? I mean, why does any of this matter, right? It's a fair question. It matters because if we take this idea seriously, even for a minute, the implications are massive. We're talking about things that go way beyond a fun philosophical puzzle. This could shake the very foundations of how we've built our society. Think about it. Our entire system of justice, our whole moral code, it's all built on one single idea, that people could have chosen to act differently. We punish a criminal because we believe they chose to do wrong. We praise a hero because we believe they chose to do right. But if our actions are all just predetermined, if they couldn't have done anything else, then what does that do to our concept of justice, or how we think about addiction, or even just our day-to-day relationships? Suddenly, all these core concepts we live by are thrown into question. Things like blame, and praise, and punishment, even guilt. I mean, can you really, truly blame someone for something if it was the inevitable end result of their entire life up to that point? And on the flip side, can you take full credit for your greatest success if you are always going to achieve it anyway? Does feeling guilty about something you did even make sense anymore? It's a huge shift in perspective, and it could be kind of profound, actually. Maybe the focus of life isn't supposed to be this constant, agonizing struggle to choose the right path. Maybe it's more about understanding the path you're already on. It could be about understanding all the forces, inside and out, that make you who you are, and learning to walk that path with a bit more compassion, maybe a little more insight. Okay, so let's talk about finding freedom anyway. There are counterarguments and a whole new perspective to consider. Because hold on a second, this is not an open and shut case, not by a long shot. The whole idea is well, it goes against everything we feel to be true. So it's no surprise that the debate is far from over. There are some really compelling arguments out there that try to rescue the idea of freedom from the jaws of determinism. So let's look at two main views on freedom. The debate basically splits into two big camps. You've got the hard determinists over here. They say, look, you can't have it both ways. If everything is determined, then free will is just an illusion, period. But then you have the compatibilists, and they say, whoa, we're defining freedom all wrong. For them, freedom isn't some magical power to break the laws of physics. It just means you're able to act on your own desires without someone or something forcing you not to. Yeah, your desires might be determined, but as long as you can follow them, you're free. And there are other challenges to determinism too. One comes from, of all places, physics. Deep down at the subatomic level, in the weird world of quantum mechanics, things seem to be genuinely random. And some people argue that this randomness could bubble up, you know? It could break that perfect chain of cause and effect and introduce real, true unpredictability to our actions. Of course, that leaves us with another tricky question. Does being random make you free, or does it just make you random? And really, that kind of brings us to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Maybe the crucial point isn't whether our will is free or not. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Instead of a simple yes or no, maybe the real question is, what does freedom truly mean? What kind of freedom is even possible for a being like us living in a universe that works like this one? And I want to leave you with this final thought, a quote that really gets you thinking. Perhaps freedom isn't the power to choose, but to accept necessity. So what if real freedom isn't about having the power to do anything at all? What if it's about deeply understanding and even embracing the person you were always going to be? What if freedom isn't about fighting your fate, but about loving it? Definitely something to chew on.